Helpless. Buffy seems to be losing her powers, and Giles may be the cause.
We open with Buffy and Angel sparring with an actual stake. Probably would have been safer to use a rubber stake or something, just in case.
And of course, it turns sexual.
He asks her if she's doing anything later, and she says she has a date.
Older man. Very handsome. Likes it when I call him Daddy.
Your father. It is your father, right?
There were several little funny moments like that in this episode that I did think were funny, but they didn't fit in. Either because the characters saying them made it seem out of character, or it just didn't fit in the scene. She goes to train with Giles, which in this case means studying crystals. How helpful.
And he mentions that Faith isn't interested in traditional training, so Buffy's responsible for all of that.
And he doesn't seem concerned about that at all, which I thought was a little weird.
You'd think you'd be pumped that he's got 2 Slayers.
And I wondered why it's taking so long to get Faith a new Watcher. They have 1 million Watchers apparently, but only 1 Slayer usually. Wouldn't it be easy to have a system figured out where they already know who the next Watcher is going to be?
Yeah, who's on deck? Later, she's out on patrol, and she fights a vampire when she gets dizzy and almost gets killed.
But she manages to kill the vampire in an effect shot that they didn't quite get right. Just leave the camera, like that's the easiest effect to do.
And the next day, she tells Giles about it,
while she tries and fails to hit a target with throwing knives in the library.
And he says she's probably just sick.
But she says she's still going with her dad to the ice show.
She tells the gang about it.
And we are reminded that Buffy is turning 18, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah.
When she goes home, she finds flowers from her father and a note saying that he won't be able to make it after all. And she tries to pretend she's not upset, but this is Buffy we're talking about, so she's very obvious about it.
I was just thinking it might be nice to have a quiet birthday.
We cut to a poorly lit room where a guy is really shittily bricking up a window.
And the judge from Ghostbusters 2 is supervising something involving a box. And they say that the Slayer's preparation is almost complete.
Buffy's telling Giles about the ice show, hinting that she wants him to take her, but he doesn't catch on.
And just tries to get her to study the crystals.
Which puts her into a trance.
Understandably.
And then he injects her with a syringe filled with yellow. The most dangerous of colors.
And that's when I started to suspect that Giles was a Romulan spy.
But instead of making her pass out, she just wakes up, and he acts like nothing happened.
And she assumes she's being affected by her supposed sickness.
The next day, Buffy is asking Willow about Rat Amy, which I'm glad they addressed. But Willow doesn't seem too concerned, and I wondered if anyone else had wondered where she was, like why she hasn't been at school, or who's living in her house, or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, they have so many weird disappearances and stuff. They probably just, put it on the list. And some guy gets mad at Cordelia for standing him up, and when Buffy tries to intervene, she gets knocked on her ass.
She tells Giles about it, who just kind of brushes it off.
And says it will get resolved eventually.
AKA the end of the episode.
Cut to him talking to the judge about how Slayers are always put through a ceremony when they turn 18, called Cruciamentum.
Good pronunciation. I pronounced it, that thing. Where she has to defend herself without any Slayer powers, and fight the creepshow monster in the crate.
Giles says the rest of the council would see that it's a bad practice if they were actually in contact with the Slayer, which again, it's stupid that they aren't. And the judge says it's important for a Slayer to be able to handle herself without her strength to rely on.
And after Giles leaves, the judge opens up the creepshow crate to reveal a strapped-down vampire.
Named Kralik, who they feed some pills before closing the box up.
The gang is trying to figure out why Buffy is a weak character, but they haven't found anything yet.
And Oz and Xander have an argument about different kinds of kryptonite. Xander is of course wrong, although Oz isn't completely right either. But this is not the time to get into that discussion.
Are you sure?
Yes.
We cut back to Crate Vampire, who breaks out of his straitjacket and ends up killing that one dude from Enterprise.
I thought it was dumb that this guy has this extendable spoon, but he keeps stepping closer when it's already in the guy's face. Buffy opens her birthday gift from Angel, which is of course a pretentious book.
Probably because he heard how high she scored on those SATs.
For some reason, they keep trying to associate Angel with sophistication, even though those two things clearly do not go together.
Yeah, he was dumping on the floor in that other episode. She laments to him about losing her powers, and he reveals that he creepily watched her before she became the Slayer, and also way before she was 18, which makes it even worse.
He says he loved her because he could see her heart, but just like she was saying, she was basically just another Cordelia back then. Nothing he said made much sense.
Par for the course. Enterprise wakes up as a vampire and frees Kralik, who swallows the pills and says he'll still play the game, but just by his own rules.
Giles enters the chrysanthemum place or whatever and finds it seemingly empty. When he sees blood, he grabs a stake, and I was hoping to get some cool Giles action, but he ends up leaving as soon as he finds some bodies.
Buffy's walking home when she's confronted by 2 creeps and then Kralik. But when she starts screaming about Kralik, the 2 creeps apparently don't hear her or have already left to be creepy somewhere else.
She tries to run and almost gets hit by a car because she's an idiot, but luckily Giles comes by to save her.
I understand she lost her powers, but she can't even climb that fence a little bit. She still has normal human strength.
Yeah, but she's always wearing such, not restrictive, but...
I think the word you're looking for is fashionable. He reveals to her that he's the one who suppressed her powers temporarily, and all the stuff about the test.
And even how the vampire was a murderer and torturer of women before he even became a vampire. This Watcher test seems more and more questionable all the time.
Sounds like you and Giles can relate.
And Buffy is understandably pissed that he didn't tell her about everything, but he says he has to answer to the council.
Cordelia comes in to remind us that she is still a part of the show.
Because what the episode needs at this point is tone-deaf comedy.
I don't know you.
Did something take her memory?
And I did think it was kind of funny on its own, it just didn't fit in the scene.
Right. What a good show.
She drives Buffy home, but before she gets there, Joyce goes outside and finds Kralik.
And when Buffy finally arrives, she finds a picture of him with Joyce, directing Buffy to come save her.
Kralik keeps taking photos of a tied-up Joyce and telling her about how he was abused by his mother and then killed her.
And he says he's going to turn Buffy into a vampire.
And have her eat Joyce.
Buffy's getting ready. She puts on her battle overalls, gets her holy water, and goes to confront Kralik.
The judge visits Giles at the library and says he is aware of what has happened, but he doesn't seem concerned and says it changes nothing.
Giles reveals that he told Buffy about the test, which should invalidate it, but the judge says it doesn't matter, since Buffy's already there, so Giles goes to save her.
Buffy gets attacked by Enterprise and totally blows a free shot with the crossbow, but manages to drop a bookshelf on him.
Then she encounters Kralik, but he just plays around with her, and it went on for quite a while. She eventually ends up in a room with a bunch of pictures of Joyce, and it's been a while since I've had to use a Polaroid, but it seems like it take a lot of film to get that many pictures, and someone would have had to pin all of those up.
Yeah, what a waste of time. Kralik busts in and is about to bite Buffy when he has a fit and tries to take his pills.
Buffy grabs them and runs away.
And she finds Joyce in the basement.
Kralik eventually catches up to her and grabs his pills and swallows them with some water.
And it turns out the water was holy water planted by Buffy.
Which he has enough time to explain before it actually takes effect and he CGI's out of existence.
Buffy tries to save Joyce, but Giles comes in fighting Enterprise. Somehow, nobody heard that happening.
And he kills the vampire.
Later, the judge tells Buffy that she passed the test.
But Giles has failed his part of the test, and he is fired as Buffy's watcher.
Your affection for your charge has rendered you incapable of clear and impartial judgment.
And he tells Giles that if he interferes with the new watcher, he will be dealt with. And I wondered what that meant.
We close with the gang discussing the events and a joke about Buffy still being weak. And I'm not referring to the show, but the character.
And an even more predictable joke about Xander not being able to open a jar of peanut butter. Helpless. Overall?
Would a vampire show up in a Polaroid picture? That was my first question.
I mean, well, we now know that the answer is yes. But yeah, I've always wondered how that's supposed to work.
I'm trying to put the important questions first.
Well, actually, yes, because the reason they don't show up in mirrors is because of the silver backing, and vampires being weak to silver.
Oh.
I doubt there's silver in Polaroids, but I don't know.
Interesting. So could they make some kind of vampire camera where they take a picture of them and it causes them to dust away?
I mean, it would have to shoot out silver or something, so I don't think so.
I'll make that.
Okay. They had that thing in Blade 2 that made like a light explosion or whatever.
Oh yeah, the UV grenades.
Yeah, why doesn't Buffy just use some of those?
I thought it was an interesting concept, but I wish they had been a little more clear that Giles had injected Buffy more than once.
Did you have the impression that he was giving her something to try to help her, maybe?
No, I was under the impression that he just did it that one time, before he told her he had been doing it more than once.
So you thought her being weak was not related to the injection?
At first, yeah.
Okay.
It was cool that we saw a little bit more of the Watchers Council, but it brought up more questions on what they actually do and how they communicate and pretty much everything about them. So yeah, why did they even show up? And it was nice that we got some actual drama of Giles being fired. It will be interesting to see where that goes, who the new Watcher is, if they actually hold to that and don't reinstate him as the Watcher in the next episode. Because it seems like whenever we get a cool new character, they're gone by the time the episode is over. And I wondered why Giles never asked the judge about Faith and why she didn't have a new Watcher yet. I mean, he's got the Watcher Council right there in the same room with him. It was an interesting concept to see Buffy lose her powers, but I thought the writing used a lot of cop-outs so she would still win, like right at the moment where she was going to die, having Kralik decide he needed his pills right at that moment.
So you're saying they should have just killed her off?
I'm not saying that. Change the show to Willow, the cool witch.
Is she really that cool, though?
No. Oz.
The werewolf guitarist.
Yeah. I thought the humor that was presented was a little out of place, especially the Cordelia thing at the end. I felt the strongest stuff was really the stuff between Buffy and Giles, and I'm actually interested to see where that goes. I'm surprised that Angel didn't show up at any point to help Buffy out, because he usually tends to do that. And my biggest question was really who was buying all that Polaroid film. I didn't think it was bad, and it did bring up some interesting points that I'm hoping they explore in the future and get better. I don't feel like it was good enough to be in B range, but I don't think it was bad enough to go too low, so I'll give it a C+.
Alright, I went ahead and gave it a B-. I thought the whole concept of the Slayer test was pretty stupid. Obviously, we're supposed to side with Giles on this, but in world, it was pretty implausible that they would actually administer this test and keep doing it over the years. It didn't make any sense. Buffy deals with huge threats on a weekly basis. How are those not enough of a test? I thought Sarah Michelle Gellar's acting was especially good in this episode, and I also liked the added complexity of her relationship with Giles. It was good to see some more Watcher stuff, although again, it didn't make a lot of sense. I did think it was interesting that they portrayed them almost as bad guys. That was not what I would have expected, and it was cool to see Giles turn against them.
Typical administration, just being out of touch with the people who are in the thick of it.
Oh, that's true. The scene with Angel reminded me of Star Wars Episode 2.
How did it remind you of Star Wars Episode 2?
It was all the bad dialogue of, like, trying to be romantic and stuff, but it was stupid. The way he's like, my heart and your heart. I wanted them to warm each other or whatever, but I don't like sand. It's like, it's exactly the same thing. I thought it was cool toward the end of the episode that we got more of a horror feel than we usually do, with Buffy running away from everything. I'm kind of surprised that we don't see that more with side characters and stuff. I mean, sometimes we get that at the beginning of an episode, but it's usually just a couple of seconds. I was pretty torn on this episode, though, because I liked the stuff that Buffy was going through. It's just that it was based on this whole test thing, which, again, didn't make any sense. But it was at least more interesting than most of the episodes we've gotten recently.